You said goodbye 11 minutes ago. You said it in the living room, and you meant it. Then you said it again in the hallway. You are now standing at the open front door with your coat on and one hand on the frame, talking about a mutual friend's new job, while cold air pours into the house and both of you pretend not to notice. Neither of you wants this. Neither of you can stop it. Everybody has a theory about why this happens. Most of those theories assume you know something about the other person that, according to the research, you almost certainly do not know. There's a number attached to that, and it is far smaller than you would guess. I will come back to it, because it changes who you think is trapping whom. Start with the structure, because the ending of a conversation is a genuine technical problem, and linguists worked out why decades ago. In 1973, Emanuel Shegloff and Harvey Sachs published a paper called Opening Up Closings. They had been listening to recordings of ordinary conversations, and they noticed something that sounds obvious and turns out to be strange. Conversations cannot simply stop. Think about how talking works. One person speaks and their finishing creates a slot where the other person is expected to speak. That other person speaks and their finishing creates another slot. The machine keeps producing openings for the next turn indefinitely by design. So to end a conversation, the two of you have to shut that machine down together. Shegloff and Sachs describe the task as coordinating a suspension, arranging things so that neither person is on the hook to say the next thing, and neither one gets held responsible for the talking having stopped. That second part matters enormously. Walking away, hanging up, or simply going quiet are all things you can be blamed for. So the ending has to be built jointly in a way that leaves nobody holding the bag. We do this with a specific set of moves, and once you know them, you will hear them constantly. They are called pre-closings anyway. Well, right. So, okay then, notice what those words have in common. Every one of them is empty. They introduce nothing, they add no information, and they do not continue the topic. Shegloff and Sachs pointed out that this is exactly the job. The speaker takes their turn and deliberately declines to use it, which signals that they have nothing further to raise. An empty turn is an offer. It says, "I have run out of business, have you?" And the other person now holds a decision they can accept the offer. Answer with an equally empty turn of their own, and the two of you glide into the actual goodbye. Or they can decline it by producing new content. You have felt that decline land. You say anyway, meaning let us wrap up, and they say, "Oh, before I forget," and the conversation reopens for another 6 minutes. Here's where the trouble compounds, and it explains the doorway specifically. To reach a clean ending, you first need the topic itself to be finished. Conversation researchers notice that people often close a topic by summarizing it, which is why goodbyes are full of little verdicts. So that is good news. Well, it will all work out anyway. At least it is sorted. Each of those is a small attempt to lay the topic to rest so the closing can begin. But summarizing a topic is itself talking. And talking creates a fresh slot which the other person, being polite, feels obliged to fill. So they offer a small verdict of their own, which creates another slot. And now the two of you are trading gentle closing noises in the doorway, each one intended to end the conversation and each one technically extending it. The goodbye becomes a machine that runs on the attempt to switch it off. Now, the number, for all their detail, none of this tells you what the other person actually wants. And the obvious assumption, the one nearly everybody makes, is that the answer is easy to read from context. They are edging toward the door. They keep checking the time. Clearly, they want out. In 2021, Adam Mastroianni, Daniel Gilbert, Gus Cooney, and Timothy Wilson tested that assumption directly and published the results in a paper with a blunt title. Do conversations end when people want them to? They studied 932 conversations across 2 experiments. In the first, they asked over 800 people to report on a recent conversation with someone close to them. In the second, they brought strangers into a lab in pairs, sat them at a table, and told them to talk about whatever they liked for as long as they liked, up to 45 minutes. Then they asked each person 2 questions. When did you want this conversation to end? And when do you think your partner wanted it to end? Start with the headline result. Conversations ended at the moment both people wanted them to, about 2% of the time. 2%. Roughly 1 conversation in 50. The paper also reports that conversations rarely ended even when just one person wanted them to. And the average gap between how long the conversation lasted and how long someone wanted it to last came to roughly half the length of the entire conversation. Sit with that scale for a second. Take a conversation that ran 40 minutes. On average, the mismatch between what somebody wanted and what they got was around 20 minutes. Now, the part that overturns the tidy version of this story, almost everyone hearing this assumes the finding is that people want to escape, that we are all secretly desperate to leave, held hostage by politeness. Mastroianni has pointed out directly that people read the study that way because it matches their most vivid memories. The data does not say that. The mismatches ran in both directions. In the study with strangers, participants on average wished the conversation had gone on longer than it did. So the doorway contains two people, and there is a decent chance that one of them is quietly hoping this continues. Which raises the question the whole paper turns on. If the desires are mixed, why can nobody tell? The researchers found that people had very little idea when their partner wanted to finish. Worse, people systematically underestimated how different their partner's wishes were from their own. You assume they roughly want what you want. They assume the same about you. Both of you are usually wrong, and neither of you finds out. The authors describe this as a classic coordination problem. One humans cannot solve because solving it would require information that people deliberately keep private. That last clause is the heart of it, and it is worth saying slowly. The single piece of information that would end the awkwardness instantly is the sentence "I would like to go now." And that sentence is the exact thing politeness exists to prevent you from saying. Announcing that you want to leave is the rude act you have been contorting yourself for 11 minutes to avoid committing. So the solution to the problem is forbidden by the problem. You're left doing the only thing available, which is guessing. And your guess comes from a system that is running hot. You're watching for signals that they want to go while carefully producing no such signals yourself, because producing them would be impolite. They are doing precisely the same thing back at you. Two people, each hiding the one fact the other needs, each reading the other's concealment as evidence. That is why the goodbye migrates to the doorway, and then stalls there. The doorway is a compromise. Standing at the threshold with your coat on communicates the intention to leave without anyone having to say it out loud. It is a physical pre-closing, and exactly like the verbal ones, it can be declined, which is why the doorway conversation exists as a genre at all. There is one honest caveat worth putting on the research. The first study asked people to recall a recent conversation, and memory of how much you wanted to leave is not perfectly reliable. The second study put strangers in a room and told them to talk, which is not quite how conversations happen in life. The core finding has held up well and matches everybody's experience, and it is still a small number of studies rather than a settled law. So what do you do with all this? The useful move is smaller than a technique. Notice that the discomfort you feel in the doorway is not really about you being bad at endings. Everybody is bad at endings because endings are built to be difficult, and because the information required to do them well is information both parties are hiding, and knowing the mismatch runs both ways changes the flavor of the whole thing. The next time a goodbye drags, the story you tell yourself is probably that you're keeping them, that they are being polite, that you should have left ages ago. There is a real chance the opposite is true, and they are staying because they think you want them to. Neither of you will ever check. If you want one practical thing, it is this. Since the pre-closing signals are the honest currency, you can afford to make yours slightly clearer than feels comfortable. Naming a reason gives the other person something to accept without either of you losing face. I should let you get on. I need to catch the half-past. Those are not rude. They give the other person permission to stop performing too. Here's the reframe worth carrying out of this. The 11-minute goodbye looks like two people failing to leave. Watch it again with the research in mind, and you see something closer to two people being careful with each other at the same time. Each one waiting for a signal the other has decided, out of kindness not to send. The awkwardness in the doorway is politeness with nowhere to go. That is the cue most people miss. If you have ever said goodbye 3 times and still been standing there, leave a comment and tell me where it happened. Subscribe to Psychology Q, and I will keep showing you the signals hiding in plain sight.